Hello everyone, let's discuss set number 4 of CAT 2025 slot 3. Let's read this set. There are three countries P, X and C. They trade among themselves and with the other countries at the rest of world. So there are three countries and they also trade with rest of the other country classified under ROW. All trade volumes are given IC, that is international currency, and the following terminology is used. Trade balance is export minus import. Total trade is export plus import, and normalized trade balance is trade balance divided by total trade when it is expressed in terms of percentage. So first let me simplify. We have to figure out the best way to represent this whole data. So I can write all the countries row wise, that is P, X and C, ROW, and in last I'll write total. Similarly, I write row wise also P, X, C, ROW and total. So I think in most of the DI set, if you can structure the problem well, then your 50% job is done. And that is what you have to learn by practicing a lot of DI question. What is the best way to, structure that set? Now, in terms of, if you look at column wise, here I will take import and here I'll take export. Like P, how much it is exporting to X, C, ROW, I will write row wise, and how much import is P is doing from other countries, that I'll write column wise. Now this I am putting cross because P cannot export or import from its own country. Same is true with X and C. But ROW can, because in ROW there are so many countries, so they can also trade between themselves. So I'm just putting a dot over here. This could have some values. Now let's try to understand what this normalized trade balance. So for P, the trade balance is 0%, which clearly means export has to be equal to import. But let's try to see that. So trade balance means export minus import divided by total into 100 is 0. So if you simplify E minus I, if you cross multiplied by 0, you get 0. So obviously E is equal to I. So for country P, this total export has to be equal to total import. Now let's do it for X. X trade normalized trade balance is 10%. So for X, E minus I upon E plus I into 100 has to be equal to how much? 10. Simplify, E minus I is equal to 0.1 multiplied with E plus I. Now simplify, you get 0.9 E is equal to 1.1 I, which means E by I is equal to 1.1 upon 0.9, which is 11 by 9. So I can say ratio of export to import for country X has to be 11:9. So let me figure out, if I say this is to be 110X, in that case, this value will become 90X. This total will become 90X. So that helps me to figure out the ratio between import of and export of that country. And same when we can do it for C also. In C case, it is minus, so I'll take with minus. E minus I upon E plus I into 100 is equal to minus 20. Simplified, E minus I is equal to minus 0.2 into E minus I. If you do that, then you get 1.2 E is equal to 0.8 I, which means E by I is equal to 0.8 upon 1.2. So 88 is to 12 is the ratio. So for this country, let's take import, export is 80p, then import will become how much? Import will become 120p. So that's how this value can be aligned, right? Now let's read further. 40% of export of X are to P. Now 40% of export of X are to P. It means 40% of 110X will become 44X. And this is 22% of import of P. So I can clearly say this 44X has to be 22% of, let's take assume import of P has to be B. So you can take, now simplify, this B will become 200X. If you just simplify this, so this value will become 200X. And since we know that export and import of P is same, so this value will also become 200X. Great. Now it says 90% of export of C are to P. 90% of export of C are to P. If I can get the value of P, this point will become useful for me. Further, this is data. So I'll be more interested in point number 5, because here some values are given to you. So the export volume of P in international currency to X and C are 600. So I can write this value. This value is 600 and this is going to be 1200. And P is the only country that export to C. Now that's a very interesting point. P is the only country that export to C essentially means C doesn't import from other countries. So these value will become 0. So now you know that 120p has to be equal to 1200. So in that case, P will become 10 and the overall import of to country C will become 1200. And with respect to that, I know the export will become 800. Now I can use point number 3, which says 90% of export of C to P. Now 90% of 800 will become 720 and 4% are to ROW, that is 32. So in this case, we know this value, total export of C has to be 800. So this value will become 48. So now I can calculate this value in terms of X, like this value become 200X minus 1800. This value will become 66X as 110 minus 44X. This value we know. For ROW, this value become 200X minus 44x plus 720. See, you add these two values, subtract from this, and for this will become 90x minus 648. So the good thing is that we know all the values in terms of x, and if I can utilize whatever other point that we have not used till now, it will help me to calculate the value of x. Once I can calculate the value of x, then I'll be able to solve all my questions quickly. So I think now we have to use point number 4. That is the point that we haven't used till now. So let's try to use that point, which says 12% of export of ROW are to X. Now how much ROW exporting to X is 90X minus 648, which is effectively equivalent to 12%. And similarly 40% are to P. So which means this, if you simplify this value, 200X minus this becomes 150X minus 720, this will be equivalent to 40%. If I can use a ratio between these two, I'll be able to solve the value of x. So let's apply the ratio. So if you simplify, I can say 90x minus 648 divided by 150x minus 720 will become 12 by 40, which I can write 3 by 10. Now you cross multiply and I think we'll be able to solve the value of x. So 900x minus 6480 should be equal to 156 into 3 which will become 468x minus 2160. Now you bring x over here, this expression over here and this value over here. 900x minus 468 will become 432x should be equal to, if you subtract 2160 from 6480, you get how much? 4320. Now here we can get the value of x to be 10. Cool. So now we got x to be 10. So I can say this value is 2000. This value is 1100. This value will become 660. This value will become 440. And similarly, we can calculate 90x 900 minus 648. This value become 252, which is essentially 12% of the total export. So in this way, I can calculate this also. If this is 12%, so 12% is equivalent to 252. So 100% will become how much? 252 upon 12 into 100. So I think this will become 12 2 is 24, 12 1 is 2100. So total export is 2100. So in this way, I can calculate this value also, like first, let me just try to figure out this value, that is 150x minus 720, which is 1560 minus 720. So this becomes 840. This is 840. This is 252. So you can calculate this value will become 1090. So I think 1008. So now we know all the values. We can easily solve question one by one. So let me look at the first question. Just 1 second, let me erase the data on the top so that we can see all the questions very, very clearly. So look at the first one. how much is exported from C to X? C to X is 48. So for question number 14, answer is 48. Look at next question. How much exported from P to ROW? P to ROW export will become 200. So for question number 15, answer will become 200. How much exported from ROW to ROW? Now we know this value is 1008. So for question number 16, answer is 1008. Question number 617. What is the trade balance of ROW? Now trade balance of ROW. Now export of ROW is 2100. Import I can calculate adding this value is 200. 660, that is 860, 892. So we can calculate the trade balance of ROW, and that will become how much? This value is coming to be 1900. This value is coming to 2100. So positive balance is 200. So option 1 is going to be the correct answer for this one. You add this value. So I think this value comes to 1900. This is 2100. So I think trade balance is 200. Now let's look at the last question. Which among the countries P, X, and C have the least total trade? Now total trade for P is 2000 plus 2000. So for P the trade is 4000. For X this value is 1100 plus 900, that is again 2000. For C this is again 800 plus 1200, that is again 2000. So among these three countries the lowest trade balance is coming from X and C. So you can clearly say option 2 is going to be the correct answer for this question. So that's all. Thank you very much.